We all understand that we now have platforms where we can rent out our place and our apartment, that there's, tons of, let's say, B2C consumer type platforms. Now, all of these companies, many of these companies, I should say, are new and leveraged, if you will, the technology that was available, which is basically, a centralized, delocalized computing platform, which no longer needed to be in a specific place, but basically is on the internet, has massive computing power. All of us have a very powerful computing device in our pocket. And so if you can write the applications, now you can basically connect everyone to this global marketplace. The first wave that we saw were basically, we call them, startups, and by now they're unicorns, or they're, multi-billion or multi-tens or hundreds of billions worth companies, because they basically, if you will, they transformed an industry. And in some cases, they probably, challenged the old players, the incumbent players, quite a bit. If you think about, the financial sector, it's pretty obvious that, there's sort of a fragmentation right now of the traditional banking offering, and you have a number of fintechs who are challenging for payment and for wealth management, and they're really hurting, if you will, the established players quite a bit. They're not very big, but they're very accessible and obviously get a lot of funding. If you look at a number of other business models, you look at media, traditional advertising, you look at the old bookstores, we all remember how that happens. Nobody goes to a bookstore anymore. And so a number of these industries have obviously been shaken. And I think the real potential is not just to have, let's say, binary replacement of, look, Żabka, for example, is one of our customers we work the deepest with, and is for me a great example of how do you take an existing customer who is obviously being challenged by the traditional platforms that we all know, the big international companies who are reinventing, in a way, e-commerce, even for the types of goods that they sell. But how can you help established companies transform themselves and leverage the massive distribution channels they have, customer base that they have, brand strength that they have, balance sheet that they have, the social function which they play in the country? Because all of these companies reinvest, they employ local people, they open their offices on the weekends, etc. All of these things, I think, are essential to an economy. And so what we try to do is we offer platforms, and we work with companies of any industry, including obviously the government and the public sector, to try and evolve the offering that they bring to their respective stakeholders. Could be citizens if you're a government, could be customers if you're a commercial company. And at the same time, we try to stay out of that business. The only success that we want to bring is to make those players successful. And I think that is, in a way, an unlimited opportunity. If you look at the valuations of tech cloud companies today and technology companies on the stock market, that gives you a sense of what investors believe the future opportunity is going to be. And I think our goal at Microsoft is to just make sure that all of that value which investors today place speculatively, if you will, in our share, that we can transition that to all of the companies that we serve and basically create value with them. I think that is ultimately what we're trying to achieve. And the last thing that we obviously try to do, because this is a global movement, is we try to bring both the best of what happens in the world in your industry, in this case to Poland. We can bring you the best reference cases of what another bank has been doing, another retailer, another energy company, another government, another vaccine platform, you name it, another healthcare project. We can bring all of that and deploy it, if our customers are interested, of course, anywhere in the world, and in this case in Poland. And at the same time, we also have a sales force in 120 countries. The IP that gets created here, we are very keen and very excited to export. And this is, for me, one of the real sort of priorities for Central Eastern Europe, is that we should be not a people exporting region, we should be an IP exporting region. And so when I see during the pandemic people coming back to their home country, and at the same time we're building platforms to help local companies, take Synrise, Polish company, builds fantastic marketing tools. One of the missions we took upon ourselves is to connect them in the US, in Brazil, in Spain, in Russia, in all these other countries we operate in, to our blue chip customers and resell what they have made in Poland to the rest of the world. So combining these two for us, I think, is really one of the priorities. And I think, play this movie out for the next 15, 20 years. And I think that's what you're asking for. What does it look like?
True. I have another question, because as your technology companies, obviously you probably talk a lot about technology itself, and we have brilliant technology today. But I strongly believe, as a leading an organization which is purely educational, that people are the most crucial element here. And so my question to you is, do you see the need to raise digital competences in Central Eastern Europe? As I know that you work closely with your people, and I know that you know a lot about Central Europe, Eastern European markets. So what's your point of view in that field?
Look, it's a multifaceted challenge that we have. If I start with the end in mind, ultimately, if we're bringing these digital platforms, actually, we're not bringing them, but if our customers and partners in Poland bring this technological vision out there, honestly, my first thought goes to the people of my generation. I won't give you my age, but you can look it up. The majority of which did not grow up in technology like I did. And so for any project to be successful, for a bank to change their engagement model to digital, for the government, one of the projects we were very proud of working on, I think this was 2-3 years ago, was the EPIT project in Poland, where we had this online tax filing system, if you will, where every citizen could do this. One of the most funny anecdotes is when we were working with the government, at some point, someone told us that they had one citizen file their tax over a PlayStation. So that's just a funny anecdote. But, it happens. It was on a browser on a PlayStation. But if you think about it, you need to make sure that every citizen has access to this. And every citizen needs to be sufficiently familiar with technology, needs to be sufficiently have access to technology. And obviously, we all know that there is a gap between the urban and the rural penetration of broadband, penetration of the computing devices, but also, skills and capabilities. So that to me is sort of the first layer, is if you're building something, make sure everybody can use it. I call that, probably the basic inclusion, which is let's make sure everybody can benefit. Then I think you've got a second layer, which is how do you make sure that the people who are actually involved in this and building this are made familiar with the tools that are required to actually building it. So we are doing an enormous amount of skilling with a number of our partners. OCHK is one of them. We have Darius with us here today. And so what we do is we just make sure that we skill a lot of the people who are engaged in technology, who work in companies, all the way up to the developers who might have been working on older technologies in the past, but obviously also want to learn about cloud technologies of the future, and in a way, safeguard their own future in this cloud world, because ultimately they want to be relevant and need to make a living, and so we're investing a ton of resources and of energy into that. I believe we made a commitment to be reskilling 250,000 people as part of our plan, and honestly, that's a starting point. But it's clear that for us is obviously one of the things you have to do, because digital transformation doesn't happen unless everybody can use it, and unless everybody who's involved in building these tools know what they are obviously up to. And more recently, we've actually, I would say, added a third component, which is a skilling program for people who most likely in the last 12, 18 months have maybe lost their job. How do we give them basic digital skills so they basically get ahead in this new economy? And how can we help them basically get to a new job faster? I want to be very humble, but the statistics are amazing. It literally puts a smile on your face when you look at the people who have come in, and the acceleration of the people who went through the program in terms of finding a next job is heartwarming. It's there's some of the most beautiful stories that you have. And then frankly, the last piece, the fourth component is Microsoft. The technology goes so fast. I spend probably every week, I think I spend 8 hours per week learning about new products, about new technologies, about what's happening out there, about how banks have reinvented this part of their business model, how oil and gas companies are using AI, et cetera, et cetera. I think I spend about 20% of my time. That implies I work 40 hours a week. I think it's probably a bit more, but I'm certainly spending 1 day a week learning and upgrading myself. And frankly, this is now the new company culture. For those of you who are a little bit older and have had the chance to know or see Microsoft grow up, when Satya Nadella, our current CEO, became CEO, he literally said, we need to evolve our culture from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit of a slap in the face. I mean, it's like telling your entire organization, hey, you guys, stop being wise guys, become sponges, absorb, learn, and listen. And I would say, 7 years later now, I think we now understand what he meant. And I want to, with a lot of humility, say that I think we've made a tremendous step forward, but that journey never stops. So skilling for us is the name of the game. It's a first-class citizen in your agenda, in your Outlook agenda. It's a first-class component of our societal engagement, our engagement with any of our customers and any of our partners. And I think it's just a new skill we're all going to have to learn to keep up with this fast-changing digital era.
I think that's a great recommendation for everyone to spend at least 1 hour a day on learning. And lifelong learning it's not just a phrase; it's something that we really should do. Not to.
I know you're a big supporter of that and engaged in a number of things, but you know what I mean, and I hope we can convey that to the broader audience here, because it is really so essential.
Absolutely, absolutely. I personally have one more question to you, Philippe, and then we'll move to the discussion with our amazing experts here. But I really want to know, if you look at the business in a longer perspective than just tomorrow, what do you see? Can you share with us?
Well, look, I think in a way there's an opportunity for us here, which is in front of us. And I think there is this beautiful saying, I forgot the gentleman's name. I think his name was Alan Key, and he was a researcher at PARC, which is the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. Mm-hmm. And his expression, which many of you would have heard it, but the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And so to answer your question, I think, look, I am very excited, passionate about the opportunity. But I also know that it makes no sense to visualize the future, that I need to spend my time on working to get there. And so this is my call to action. If people envisage, if people visualize what that opportunity could be, it's great to daydream for 30 seconds about how great it could be. And frankly, I would say let's leave that to the politicians, because they typically fund a lot of these things. They come out, they lead, they inspire. That's their job. They should put the money in the right place. And I think, you know, that they set directions. For the rest of us, it's going to be a lot of hard work. And so if we can all basically figure out that we have a role to play here, if we can embrace this future, which is going to be built on, you know, platforms with new tools, new technologies, which provide opportunities for every company, for every citizen, and for every civil servant to reimagine and rethink what their engagement model with their stakeholders could be, professionally, socially, that they try to copy what the best of the world is offering and innovate and reinvent so that we can bring the best of the world, which would be Polish, to the rest of the world. And we work hard at it, and we continue to just, you know, reskill ourselves, we continue to invest collectively, then I think we're going to make this future true. And so, you know, my focus really is on can we mobilize everyone? And look, as Microsoft, we wanted to make a first big step. This is a step we would never have made if it hadn't been for a couple of, you know, visionaries in business in Poland who came together and said, yes, now is the time. We see the business opportunity. We're going to commit to this future together. And, you know, the government supporting it, and you know, the regulators thinking with us, and then, you know, we obviously doing our work, convincing our internal people. But we're going to have to continue to work together, figure this out. We've got a network of tens of thousands of, you know, partner companies working on our technology. They need to reinvent themselves. But I think if we all work hard and we keep that, you know, that great future out there, honestly, this is my view of the Polish DNA, and this is why I am convinced that if we all stick to that, we will see these results and we will enjoy them in the future.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. Hardworking, focusing on education and on the learning path. I would add experimenting.
Yes.
Because technology is the place, the tool, the great tool for experimentation. But in big organization, it is still not that obvious that we are allowed to experiment.
It's changing. I'm seeing senior leaders basically set up this experimentation environment. You know, for whatever, for 50 euros, you can build a new project in the cloud, and if you like it, you scale it up to 500,000. And if you don't like it, you stop. So I think the culture is changing, but you're absolutely right. We've got to dare. And I think the first steps were made. We were proud and happy to be a part of it. But with us comes an entire coalition of people. And I'm extremely optimistic and extremely excited about that future together.
That's true. So, Philippe, let me now introduce and invite to our discussion 3 additional experts from our market. Konrad Maj. Konrad is head of Center for Social and Technological Innovation, Human Tech, very important, you know, connection at SWPS University. Welcome, Konrad. Piotr Mieczkowski, Digital Poland Foundation President. Hi, Piotr, nice to have you with us. And Dariusz Śliwowski, Vice President of Chmura Krajowa, our Polish cloud organization.
Whom we work with every day.
And I didn't remember to introduce myself, so I'm going to tell it now. My name is Jowita Michalska. I'm CEO and founder of Digital University and an ambassador of Singularity University in Poland. So, who wants to start? I know that you were listening carefully, so you probably have a lot of questions to Philippe and to each other. Let's start a discussion.
So let me perhaps start. You called us experts. Do you know what Niels Bohr told about experts?
No, but you're going to tell me soon.
An expert is a person who has made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field. So actually, I don't feel like an expert. I still have a lot to learn. But being more serious, just some ideas that have come to me when listening Philippe. The big challenge which comes from the description of the current world and this digital transformation, digital strategy, digital future. The challenge I see is the world of bubbles we live in. You know, we all live in information bubbles, network bubbles, and also in bubbles of skills. We have in the same time this new economy, this digital native economy, digital native companies, and we have this brick and mortar businesses. Some of them will probably disappear in the future. Like an example you Philippe gave, nobody goes to a bookshop now because everybody moved to the e-commerce. But there is a lot of businesses, traditional businesses, that really need to convert to this digital future, digital perspective, in a way which is not traditional. This is not an evolution they have to implement. This is really a revolution they need to survive, to bring value to their shareholders, to clients, to their own employees. So the issue I think we are facing quite often is how to combine this new generation of digital people and digital skilled people with these traditional businesses, and how to make them work together to bring completely to develop and build something completely new. Big challenge. We are facing that every day when meeting big organizations, public administration, also big companies, and it's a long path in front of us we have to go to convince them. Thanks to your investment in Poland and the skilling program, I think we are closer to a success, but still a long path to go. If we don't succeed and we are not doing it in a regular, everyday way, will not be able to bring our country to a new level. But it is needed. We have all the tools in our hands, skilled people, the highest participation in the IT business in our region, and the issue and challenge how to take this IT digital people with traditional businesses and make them work together to develop something completely new on a crossroad of these two attitudes.
Yeah, look, I think that's very true, and ultimately, I think, you know, if you think about it, we saw a wave of, you know, started 10 years ago. We saw a wave of small startups basically hurting established players. Now they had, you know, they found a way to remove friction. They found a way to cut through channels and layers, and they had a proposition which, in a way, hurt the big established players. Now, I believe we've seen most of that, because ultimately every customer that they needed to acquire from zero. I believe we're now in a phase where that has hurt enough for the established, let's call them brick and mortar, right? For the established players with 100-year legacy, with strong brands, which people trust with their data, have trusted for 100 years. They are starting to see at the leadership level that, you know, these things have hurt. But I also believe that if they, you know, have the right leadership, which I believe most of them have, and they start looking at sort of the talent management and bring in young people to inspire and in an experimental way set up some new value propositions in their organizations, if these work, they can immediately expose what they have to their existing 30,000, 300,000 or 3 million customers. And so that's something which these startups never had. So I'm really very bullish on the second wave of transformation, which is the wave of transforming, you know, the existing players who are still around, because these have incredible strong footprints, a lot of assets on their balance sheet, if you will. And I think all it takes is just a little bit of inspiration and a little bit of leadership and some talent. The talent is out there. The IP is being written. If you put the IP on the right platforms and it can be used and scaled, these things will happen. So I think what you describe is a risk which I now see becoming less and less. And I am actually quite hopeful, but it also describes, I think, a painful period of probably the last, 10 years that we had to go through, where stuff was happening outside the company, and a lot of business leaders didn't want to acknowledge it. They didn't want to see it, and I'm now quite hopeful that we're in the second phase where they see it and they're trying to figure out how to do it. And so all well-intended help in a way is welcome, but I am very optimistic that this model will ultimately prevail, that will set us on the way, if you will, to the next wave of economic prosperity.
And just almost exactly 1 year ago, we signed an agreement between Microsoft and OCHK, and
next week.
Next week, exactly. And actually, the perception of the cloud and cloud technology on the market as we see it now, and as it was a year ago, it's nothing
completely changed. Absolutely,
completely different story.
Absolutely.
So this is a great proof that there is a future, and this is all in our hands. How to manage, how to make, develop the economy, society, businesses in this new digital way.
And as I said, it's a matter of supply and demand, Dariusz. And look, we've always had the supply, but it took some courageous leadership in the country to create the demand. And so when those two come together, good things happen. And like you, I'm incredibly impressed with the progress that I've observed, in government, whether it's the Ministry of Finance, healthcare, everything that we did, even just using cloud related to the vaccinations and the pandemic. Obviously, in PKO Bank Polski, in retail customers with Lotos, with Żabka. All of these major companies are just accelerating the opportunity that they see, and I think the move, if you will, that we made 12 months ago certainly would have contributed massively to that, because it now became the standard, the norm, and I now feel everybody's embracing it, and I think soon we'll have a war for talent. We will have more demand than hands and feet able to actually deliver it, which is a great problem to have.
Fully agreed.
Actually, if I may add or build on top of that you mentioned, because I fully agree that they're gonna be, even maybe right now we have a problem with a shortage of the specialists, especially on the women's side, because if you look at how many women we have in AI or in IT, it's about, it depends, but it's between 10 to 20% around, within European Union, and when we talk about the countries. But my question would be about, since we are talking about the competences, and I truly believe that's probably maybe even a culture, that's probably the most important question for me. Even this year, we're gonna, during the digital festival, we're gonna make a skill up challenge. And I see a huge difference. I think it was also mentioned by Jovita. There's a huge difference between, I believe, CE countries and more advanced countries, especially when we talk about the most digital countries, which is like Sweden, so the Scandinavian countries. And I see a huge difference in long life learning. And I'm a leader of such an initiative called Elements of AI. There's a course which promotes basics of AI, and I've seen that in Finland, for example, when they started up. The president of the Finland done this course. The CEO of the many, I think even 100 companies, even the public companies did that course. I tried to do it in Poland, and believe me, that was not easy. I didn't convince Prime Minister, not yet, at least.
Yet.
And I see I see mostly, unfortunately, that at least in Poland, and my question would be about your, let's say, experience in the region, but at least in Poland, I see that many CEOs or leadership, they say that, yeah, long life learning is important, but it's for specialists, it's for, IT developer. And I'm really amazed that you said that you are spending so much time on learning, because I would even add 10 minutes per day. 10 minutes, that's, you're going to be probably within 15% most dedicated people, because most people, I believe, that's my experience. Most people don't educate, when they graduated. So my question would be how to convince the leadership, of the biggest companies or institutions in Poland, but maybe in the region to start this long life learning journey, and what are maybe the best practices? Because frankly speaking, I'm amazed that the current CEO of Microsoft actually made a huge remake of Microsoft. Even if you take a look at the stock exchange or whatever kind of aspect, the tools, the culture changed a lot. So my question would be how to make that change. I mean, what are the best practices, and how do you see how to convince people to start learning?
Look, I think there's probably two elements to your answer, Piotr. And I think the first one is I want to give you a global perspective to make you feel better. You may look up to Finland, but I can tell you, I think the rest of the world looks up to CE, Central Eastern Europe. I'll give you one example. So much like your AI program, we have our own AI business school, which is you're familiar with it. It's a similar free course available on the internet. And just for reference, just to give you this data point, globally, we're organized in 14 different regions. So US, Canada, Latin America, Central Eastern Europe, China, Western Europe, et cetera, et cetera. We have 14 different areas. When we launched the AI Business School offer online, I honestly couldn't believe it. But for the first year, every month, systematically, the number of users and the number of click-throughs, if you will, so people actually following the course, were in absolute terms, not relative to population, not relative to anything, in absolute terms, the highest around the world in Central Eastern Europe. So that tells me two things. I think one, people know a good deal. They see a free course, they go for it, right? Two, more seriously, the level of education on STEM is just a little bit higher. In fact, it's a lot higher than in Western Europe even just. It's just enough higher that people feel that the barrier to this digital learning is just small enough for them to step into it. And so, look, I think everything is relative. I saw this amazing post on Instagram the other day. The first picture, you see a guy in a Lamborghini, and in the background, there's a helicopter flying. And the text of the picture says, "Oh, I really want a helicopter." And then the next picture, you see the guy in the Lamborghini and a guy with a BMW SUV next to him, and the guy in the SUV says, "Oh, I really want a Lamborghini." And it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. So then there's a guy with a normal car, an old car, a motorbike, a bike, a guy on foot, and then the last picture is a guy in a wheelchair sitting on his balcony watching someone walk over the street and said, "I wish I could walk." So it's a beautiful metaphor, if you will, for, first of all, for inclusion and making sure we activate everyone in the workforce, right? So that's number one. Number two is it's all relative. I think we are in an amazing region when it comes to learning, self-skilling, and making ourselves better. And I believe we are far ahead of, let me put the United States out there. I really believe we are. Now, the second part of the answer is it takes leadership. It takes people like yourself to advocate for this. It takes business leaders to invest in this. I can tell you, when I went to the leadership of PKO Banka Polska and basically offered this skilling for employees, I mean, they couldn't get enough. They were like, no, wait a minute. We also want this and we also want that, and our employees can't use it. Our employees can't use it on the weekend at home. I'm like, we want more and more and more and more. So the hunger is there. I think this ambition to reskill yourself in this region and in Poland in particular is absolutely there. So let's be optimists. Of course, we can talk about Finland. Let's keep the bar at Finland, but I feel very good, and let's encourage those who do it, because I think we're ahead of the rest of the world.
True, I have to say that I fully agree. Konrad, do you have any questions?
Yes, I agree, but not fully.
Or
Good.
Yes, because I see that you are very, let's say, extremely optimistic about technology and future, I guess. But
right person in the right place.
yeah, right. But as Jovita said, I am a psychologist. I'm representing Human Tech Center. So my question and my talk will be more about human. So let's talk about more about human than about business, because you mentioned about benefits, value proposition, transformation, economic growth, and so on and so on. But behind the idea of digitalization is a hidden assumption that this process is positive, and we as humans we need it. But I think that especially nowadays, during epidemic time, people are become more afraid of the digital world, in generally speaking, because there is too much, let's say, glass screens. People have more contacts now with glass screens than with real people. So my question is, do you take into account that this process of digitalization may slow down because people are fed up with technology? For example, because I'm giving lectures to my students, and I see that their attitudes toward technology has changed. So in my humble opinion, of course, technology and the digitalization process, it's it's impossible to avoid, yes, right? But on the other hand, maybe we should compensate this negative effects of being in digital world. So maybe, for example, I don't know, through contacts with nature, like in Finland, right? So so my question is about your what you think about this process of digitalization, because, as I said before, maybe this process slowed down because of the epidemic time, yes, because now we are talking every time that this epidemic make this process faster, but it's maybe not true, right? Because I see, as I said, people's attitudes. So is it something for your company, for Microsoft? Is it something important for you? Do you analyze it? Are social attitudes and psychological aspect of your interest? What do you think about such social and psychological aspects towards technology?
Look, Konrad, I think that's a very fair push, and it's definitely something which is top of mind for us. Let's start by all agreeing that we all want this pandemic and this lockdown to be over quickly. Nobody asked for this, nobody wanted this, and so in a way we have been pushed into an experiment which in a way got out of hand. At the same time, I think it's fair to say that, without the technology that we have available, businesses would have basically stopped working. We would all have been out of a job. It would have been hard for us to make a living. It would have been hard to get food delivered. It would have been hard to do any shopping. Frankly, even the pharmaceutical companies were able to, develop the kind of molecules that they need to, hopefully get us all vaccinated soon, using advanced technology. So look, did we want this last 12 months of rapid acceleration? No. Did it probably kickstart something? Yes. Are we hoping for it to normalize? Absolutely. I think there's a couple of, takeaways, if you will, that I think are important. Number one, if you think about, let's say, the area which we spend probably the most time and historically, it's people's productivity, right? So when our company was founded in the 1970s, people were using typewriters and envelopes to share documents, and somebody was bringing you. So that's where our company started. We've obviously come a long way since then. When it comes to productivity, we all look at Microsoft. We have been working in a hybrid mode. You go to the office when you want to meet other people. You dial in from a customer or from home when you want to, and you find the right balance that works for you, and the balance that works for you and that works for your team. So the team leader would say, can we agree that we come in once a week and we do our physical team meeting? And people would say, sure, let's do that on Friday. So on Friday, I go to the office and the rest of the time I work from, but there's no obligation, right? Now we are not allowed to, and we are obliged to. So that obviously is a pressure cooker that we're in and we need to get out of. So as we evolve, it's clear that, as much as the world will never look like what it looked like before, there was obviously a lot of pressure put on people. The mental well-being of many employees of many companies around the world has really suffered. And we are trying to analyze, if you will, what an overflow of digital time and digital meetings is doing, not just to mental health, but also to the social capital. In fact, I have probably, I guess probably close to 100 employees whom we hired in the last 12 months who have never seen a colleague in real life. It's very hard to build social connection, to build confidence, and to build a working group if you've never met in person. So those are some of the things we're going to have to come back to. I think business travel is going to end up being very different. And to be honest, for someone who used to travel, to take 100 flights per year, that's probably a positive, Conrad. I'll tell you whenever we get back to normal, but this will be good for me that I don't take 100 flights a year anymore on the personal side. At the same time, I think we will have the luxury of going to an office where we can and of working remotely where it suits our needs. So this is all going to blend. And this new hybrid reality, I think, is something where we will all need to show a lot of empathy to find this new balance. There was no empathy when the government, for our protection, locked us down. But I think now that responsibility will shift gradually to business leaders, and even it will shift to my manager. Because whatever Satya Nadella decides, ultimately my manager is the person who decides what my working group and what my working environment needs to look like. And so thankfully, he's a guy with a lot of empathy. But so that responsibility will shift, if you will, from the pandemic and the government leadership to every team leader out there and every company to make sure that we restore a little bit of normalcy. I think it's going to take us 18 months, 2 years, maybe more, to come back to something that is sustainable and where everybody has basically recovered from, the crazy experiment we're in right now. I want to maybe shift gears a little bit and address, I think, a second point where you started and you said, Philippe, you're a tech optimist. And look, we have seen the downsides of too much technology or too much usage now clear. I think there's another element to this, which is if you look at technology, we are of the belief that there's a number of prerequisites to make sure that what Conrad and we all aspire to remains true. First of all, you obviously need a number of ethical principles that define what you want to put the technology to use for, right? If you're using it for illegal surveillance, if you're using it to ultimately spy on people, harm people, restrict their rights, whatever, that's not the way we envisage the use of technology. In fact, we have internal systems and committees that will prevent selling technology to use cases like that in specific countries, just to be, including the US, by the way, right? So we stopped selling a number of technologies to specific customers because we did not align with what they were going to be used for. So that's number one. Number two, at a more philosophical level, we believe technology should be there to augment people's capabilities. It is not there to replace people's capabilities. Now, look, there's a number of tedious activities like filing my expense statement. If I can have my smartphone, take a picture and it gets uploaded into the expense system automatically, and you know, I don't need to do it myself or have someone do it. You can say, wait a minute, Philippe, what is your assistant saying? Because she used to do your expense statement and now you have an app. Okay, fair. But I would say that if you asked her, she probably did not find this the most exciting part of her job. So our philosophy is that we believe there's so much opportunity out there. We should make sure that we use the technology at first to provide it to every risk manager in a bank, every marketing manager out there, every field technician wearing an augmented reality, an augmented reality set of glasses with additional information whilst he's looking through and doing maintenance. So we really have this very positive augmentation of human capabilities philosophy. And obviously, there's exceptions to that. But I think there is a way, because there is so much opportunity, to really take an optimistic view on where technology can help. And at the very least, stop what I would call nefarious and badly intended use of technology. And in the middle, we'll find the common ground. The final point I want to make is, look, jobs are going to change. If you're a marketing manager, if you're a financial planner, if you work in a bank, if you're even in manufacturing on a plant, if you don't know what these tools are bringing or could bring, the world is going to change. So this is why we need to skill. This is why we need to reskill people. You will have people who won't reskill. I get that. But the majority of us can be reskilled, and the others will discover that 35% of jobs that are coming by 2025, we don't even know what they are. So that's why we just need to be learners and reskill ourselves and just be an open arm what's coming. And then make sure we manage the boundaries, use technology for the good, protect people's well-being, and make sure that, of course, technology is not being abused. And I think that is, that's either part of your DNA as a company and as a person, or it's not. But, we try to make sure that that's part of our DNA and build the kind of future Conrad would be proud of.
More or less 100 years ago, governments, nations, societies decided that all citizens should be able to read and write. And today, all citizens need to have digital skills, not to narrow their minds, but just to open their minds and their capabilities for the future. Because as Philippe says, in 20 years, there will be plenty of jobs we don't even think there will be today. But being digital
let me a short
will
comment. Of course,
open the opportunities.
Short comment. Of course, my question was a little bit provocative, right? Because I am also a technology supporter. And I believe also in skilling, reskilling, and digital transformation. But I think your company should be prepared for more negative reaction when epidemic finish, right? Because people, I see, as I said, a lot of negative attitudes because it's too much technology, and we need more real and we need other people, because as we of course know, that for us, for humans, real relationships is for us more profitable, right? And our hormones also are produced in a very huge way, a big way. The digital contacts are completely different, right? So Of course, I understand your point of view, but you need to prepare for more problems, maybe, and as I said, some negative reaction. That's all.
No,
but
totally. Look, and I have a blog post on LinkedIn coming out on exactly that. Is the situation of the last 12 months in many companies. 30,000 employees have been surveyed, and look, it's not rosy, it's not great. But as I said, I think we were sort of forced into this forced experiment. And I think what's going to really matter is what they teach you in school is focus on what you control, right? And so I would say the last 12 months, I don't think we had any choice. I think we were doing it for the greater good, to protect ourselves and to protect the rest of society. I think we managed to do it with minimum impact, at least to the economies. I think minimum impact even to people in terms of they were able to keep their jobs, they were able to keep their income, unless you were if you're working in hotel or in restaurants, obviously it was a very, very tough time. If you're a frontline worker or a hospital worker or a factory worker, or a postman, you probably work 3 times as much as the others. So there's a lot of inequity there. But I would say as soon as this ends, let's make sure we focus on what we can control. And I think if we can start the conversation which you're pointing at, Konrad, which is exactly the right one, we need to realize that at some point we can't blame it on the government or on the virus anymore. It's going to be on us. It's going to be on leaders. It's going to be on every manager and every organization to have this empathetic view on what is best and what each of their team members are telling them, and then find this new balance. And that is within our control. And so, we have a lot of data points. We even did some, we did some surveys on what too many of these calls do to your brain and which areas light up. I mean, I spare you the details because we have an organization called Microsoft Research, which has academic credentials, which has over 200 PhDs, Nobel Prize winners, field medal winners, and is recognized in the academic world as a real, educational institution, if you will. And they did some very deep physiological research and sociological research on the impact of the pandemic. And we're now trying to make sure that we live by the learnings of that as we help customers come out of this period, and really also tell them, look, in this new world, we're going to require different skills. And I think, empathy and how you organize yourself and the best practices there is honestly what I talk about all day with customers, because everybody wants to know, how do you see the future of work in this new hybrid world? As Microsoft, of course, with Windows and Office and the computer, we were born in this category, or I probably helped create this category of the digital worker, 40 years ago. And we're really facing, I think, a secular shift now, and we need to make sure that we deal with that well. But the key is we are all going to be responsible for making it right, and we as Microsoft obviously want to contribute. The last plug that I'll make is we have a tool coming out called Microsoft Viva, which measures people's intensity, what their social network looks like at work, how many people they collaborate with, how many hours they work after hours or in weekend. When I send an email, I get a report back that says your email was read by I send it to 2 people, and the report comes back and says it was read by 60 people, because I give people work. So there's an iceberg of work that I can go create. And so these are all some of the tools that we're creating to help people realize how to collaborate in this new world. But again, I think if we all show up the way we can, and we use the types of tools and technologies that are out there, I think we can find this new balance post this period. We all want to get through, obviously.
We have to summarize, but I need to ask one more question, because I need that this topic has to be covered as well. You said that diverse and inclusive teams make for better leaders. So tell us about how you build diversity and inclusion within Microsoft, or about your observation, because as we can see in this meeting, we are not there yet in Poland.
No, that's true, and I apologize for being a man here, and thank you, Jovita, for being with us. No, seriously. Look, I think we've come a long way. I remember joining this company 10, 11 years ago, and we were already talking about diversity and inclusion. But to be honest, we were talking about representation. We were, measuring the representation of females versus the total workforce. And I think that was probably the right place to start. Today we have, I would say, industry leading and regional leading type of, diversity and representation. This is in part, by the way, this is also in part because the educational systems in this region have historically been so good that in a company like ours, which is of course a technology company, this region is among the best when it comes to representation of females. Now, that's one part. Now, obviously, when you've dealt with that and then you work in an American company and you realize over the last 12, 18 months that, there's obviously everything to do with, Black and African Americans, that I think has also at the global level for us really had us rethink what we thought was there and what we thought was okay, but really wasn't. And then, of course, you have everything to do with, people's orientation and sexual orientation and religion and what have you. And look, as a global company, we operate in pretty much every country in the world. We obviously always respect local laws and regulations, but at the same time, we are deeply convinced of the benefits of bringing everyone in the workforce, giving everyone access to the benefits of this technology. And so we try to also apply that in our own teams in terms of how we hire and also in terms of how we show up. The best meeting is the one where you get conflicting opinions. When Conrad says to me, I agree and I disagree, I'm like, yes, this is what I need. I need someone to come in with a different opinion that makes me think, right? So those, I think, are the types of reflexes that we want to create. We have to create this future together. If somebody knew what it looked like exactly, they would probably be on a big boat somewhere in the Caribbean drinking a margarita, but nobody knows because we're building it together. So it's the clash of ideas. It's the clash of opinions. It's listening to, working mothers during a pandemic that makes you realize that, yeah, we think we have it tough at home with kids making noise, but they run the family mostly on top of that, as well as have a job, in our case, at Microsoft. And so, that then allows you to basically learn and think how you need to adapt. So, besides the fact that, this digital wave is going to be a reset, we need digital inclusion, we need gender, race, sexual orientation. Basically, we need any minority to join. And if I can end on the wise words of Darius, if 100 years ago, we all started to read and write, wouldn't we all agree today that that applies to everyone?
That's a great word. That's a great phrase for ending our discussion. And I think, thank you, constant learners, Piotr, Konrad, and Dariusz, for being with us. Thank you so much, Philippe, for your enthusiasm to technology, for everything you shared with us. I appreciate it a lot. And Pavel and Bartosz, you're masters of ceremonies, so the ending part is yours.
Okay, thank you very much all. Now we would like to show you a little gift from us, and I would like to Kasia, could you share your job?
Yes, of course.
Kasia is our graphic recorder, and we'll show you how fantastic job she did.
So this is my job.
Wow.
From this meeting. It was very open. I feel open-minded now. I didn't know that Poland is 5th economy in Europe, so this was my little surprise. for
Now
me.
you have to share it.
To be honest, it's European Union, not Europe, but it
Okay.
looks great to Europe.
Fantastic. I just took a screenshot here, so
No, we will send you it. No problem.
I took a screenshot. I'm saving it right away.
Okay. Okay. Now you're sure you have it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you and listen to this presentation, because that reminded me that even if we work with such topic as technology, we can still be humans. And yeah, thank you very much.
Super.
Okay. Kasia,
You are the future. So make it into what you want it to be, and we'll help you.
Kasia, thank you very, very much. I would like to thank to all of you. Philip, thank you for being with us. Jovita, thank you for a great moderating. Dariusz, Konrad, Piotr, thank you for questions and for being with us too, and thank you, Pavel, for organization this meeting. I would like to tell one more thing, because I would like to say who will be our next guest. Next guest will be Jim Collins, medical engineering and professor of biological engineering at MIT next week. So we will talk about future. Also, thank you, and be with us when we with WeInnovators Club. Thank you very much. See you
Thank you very much.
next week.
See you.
Bye
Thanks,
bye,
everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.